We are live. The red light is on. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the second in our Modern Data Ecosystems video series. I'm Elliot Clarkson, VP of Global Marketing here at Amplifi. I'm joined again by my colleague Mike Evans, who's Chief Innovation Officer at Amplifi. And we're delighted today to be joined by Jesper, who's Director of Product Innovation at Stibo Systems. So, welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So, as a quick, before we dive into the conversation around MDM and modern data ecosystems, I think it's probably worth putting a bit of background in place. So, Amplifi and Stibo are global partners and have been for almost a decade. We've got over 40 combined customers in North America and Europe. Amplifi were actually recently named Delivery Partner of the Year for 2023. So we've got a lot of history and we've seen the market change and evolve, and we've moved our customers along with that together. Stibo's STEP platform is one of the leading multi-domain master data management solutions, and also continues to evolve. And obviously with Jesper's role as product innovation, continues to innovate and build new functionality and new ways of mastering data for their customers. So let's dive into it. So I think we've seen master data management, the analysts are talking about lots of these new approaches to data management. We've seen Forrester's recent Forrester Wave making a very bold statement that data fabric is incomplete without master data management. So Mike, I don't know if you want to kick us off with a question, but what role, in your opinion, does MDM play in a modern data ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting and quite. I think we're probably in a time where perhaps the perception of MDM is being challenged a little bit, and I think there's been a lot of hype around things like approaches like fabric and mesh when we're talking ecosystem wide, and also a lot of excitement about things like generative AI, which are almost like distraction factors from some of the almost the foundational elements that you should be putting in place as an organization. And I think with all of that going on, it's quite easy to forget that MDM is like quite a mature part of the market. It's well established. It's proven to deliver value and kind of generally accepted as something that does deliver value to businesses. And I thought the Forrester kind of statement about MDM being like a crucial part of the fabric is it just rings incredibly true with me, that fabric is talking about a broader approach of kind of how you I guess evolve your ecosystem over time. It's not being so prescriptive about all of the individual components that need to exist within your ecosystem. I think it's very easy to forget that MDM provides a lot of those fundamental capabilities, and it's as essential today as it's ever been.
Yep, and I mean, sort of from MDM supports the entire digital information supply chain, right? It's about how, you can talk about many different data ecosystems, but when you talk about a data ecosystem that supports the information supply chain, you need your data all the way from your suppliers to manufacturing, to distribution, to retail, to the end consumer, and deliver a good product experience. So you need to sort of carry and assemble all that data across that entire supply chain, and that's where this carefully curated and approved data describing not just product data, but also entity level data such as suppliers, location, customer data, corporate assets even is super critical. So I can obviously only agree that MDM and multi-domain MDM in particular is critical to that data infrastructure to support the modern data ecosystem. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's interesting, Jesper. Mike and I have talked about this before, and we talked about this in the first video. Is I think one of the things people look at when they talk about modern data stacks or modern data ecosystems or modern data architecture is the word modern is always in there, and modern always sounds like you have to have something brand new, and and any kind of all the stuff that's come before can be thrown away, and it's not the case at all, right? Like Mike said, is actually where you've got mature technology like MDM, you should consider that the foundational aspect to do all the new modern things that people are trying to do with data, right? That's the
No, and I mean, when you think about how we innovate our roadmap, and if you look at the platform we have for multi-domain MDM. It's actually, well, the same, you could say. It's the same foundation that we've had all along as we moved at the beginning, back in the zeros from pure PIM into then location, customer, supplier, and then just evolving that whole ecosystem on the same sort of framework, not the same technology. We changed the underlying database technology and things like that. That's all fine, but the essence of what we do and the way that we do it with multi-domain MDM has stayed the same. Yet still, we innovate, from two different angles. First of all, of course, we look at market evidence, like what are customers, what are partners such as yourselves seeing in the market, what are the trends, what do we need to do? We are a pragmatic shop, and we look at the pervasiveness and urgency of requests. But at the same time, we can also do fast prototyping and proof of concepts in my team, such as, you mentioned it, Mike, ChatGPT and Gen AI came. I mean, we did the first integrations with ChatGPT back in January. I think it's some of the first vendors in this space. So we sort of play on both sides of that innovation approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll come on. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say like it's really like it's great hearing about like the way that Stibo are evolving, and I think I've said that kind of MDM is a critical part of the Monday's ecosystem, but what's also important in MDM is that MDM itself evolves to taking advantage of some of the advances in generative AI is a good example of that, and I think we'll only see that expand. But there's also things like, well, we talked about Fabric before briefly. Well, the role of MDM in a Fabric might not change particularly, but some of the expectations of MDM, so the ability to, for example, expose metadata that can be analyzed as part of the Fabric and used to inform the evolution of the Fabric, that's something that's going to be, I think, an increasing expectation of organizations who are out to like look at MDM platforms. And I think Stibo are very, very well positioned there, incidentally.
Well, and it's from our point of view, we're not claiming to become a Fabric. We're not claiming to be a mesh. We play a role in that, and an important one. But the only way that we can do that is through openness. For instance, through APIs, obvious Graph API, GraphQL, and all those things that makes it so easy to just tap into that curated master data. Whether you're applying a mesh or a Fabric approach in your organization, doesn't matter. Those individual constituents of the ecosystem, they need to have those APIs to deliver the data that is needed by the other systems.
Agreed. So I've got a question I want to ask you guys about generative AI later. But the second thing I was going to ask is, we've mentioned Fabric and and the role it plays, but obviously mesh is more of a, if you like, a kind of an approach that's got the four foundations of it. What role in your opinion does multi-domain MDM play in an approach like data mesh, for example?
I can go first on that one, and then you go follow Mike. Sorry. So I think we need to remind ourselves that ThoughtWorks, when they coined data mesh, that concept was originally coined as an approach to manage and curate data for analytical use cases. And Stibo Systems step multi-domain MDM is not an analytical platform, but we feed into that. You cannot do analytics in your organization, in the types of organizations that we play in, without having your master data in place. So we play into that, these four different foundational pieces of mesh: data as a product, domain ownership, self-serve data platform, federated governance. We play into most of these. Maybe not so much federated governance, but self-serve data as data platform as an example. As I mentioned before, the different data owners, they need to be able to tap into that data that they have, whether that's data across product, location, supplier, customer, etc., and then get that data and combine it into their data products to enable the analytics. So that, Mike, I don't know if you want to.
It's an interesting point around when mesh was originally coined, the focus was on analytical data, but I think as we all kind of recognize, analytical data is very intrinsically tied to the source data that is being analyzed, right? So and some of that data will be master data, and others might be like transactional information from other sources.
Exactly.
So it's quite hard when you think about the governance model, the operating model in mesh, to separate separate analytical data completely from your sources. And I think actually in the kind of as mesh evolves, we'll start to see perhaps MDM solutions just deployed in slightly different ways. Perhaps domain oriented MDM solutions popping up that kind of master data within a narrower scope within a particular domain, and the expectations of the platforms there might be to be able to spin up data mastering applications that are segregated and kind of domain specific. And again, platforms like Step are very well placed to be able to do that. So I think we will start to see kind of different usage of MDM. But then, as I also always say, like where I've encountered organizations that are implementing mesh approaches, they're usually taking some kind of hybrid approach where the certain kind of very critical master data is very much being managed using an MDM platform and managed cross-functionally, and then other areas of data are much more fluid and much more under domain ownership. So I think we'll see a lot of hybrid models, and I think if you look at some of the Gartner advice on mesh and fabric as well, they kind of support that with their reviews, I think.
Yeah, and isn't it the same we've always talked about, right? It's mesh and fabric. There is no prescriptive, this is the way you have to do it. It's more of, it is an approach, it is a way of doing things, and it's it's looking at what is your requirement, what you're actually trying to do, and what role does certain technology play in it is always the question you should be asking yourself, right? That's the
Absolutely. And things like the complexity of your business, how your organization is distributed, how complex the organization is. There's a lot of factors on whether or not those things are the right approach for you. It's just, I guess it's just important for us to consider that we need to be adaptable to different kinds of approaches and be able to adapt to different scenarios, that not all businesses are the same.
Exactly. And the whole domain ownership conversation of data meshes, I think it's the most important of the four, because what you want to make sure is that the teams that know the data, they can actually serve up the data to other stakeholders in the organization. Now you can imagine, as you said, Mike, that you can have sort of independent systems that support each of the different domains, but that sort of, to me, complicates this self-serve data platform where you want to have an infrastructure that IT can govern reasonably simple. And if you have a multi-domain MDM platform, there's just that one platform. Even though each of the teams that have their own domains, they will see that as their own individual solution, then you can actually support this federated governance on that platform, because there is just that one platform.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer than the 20 minutes, half an hour that we've given ourselves here. But no, it's very interesting conversation. So I said I had a question for you about generative AI, and obviously things like ChatGPT, and it's had its hype moment, I think, and I think it's obviously still, now people are actually trying to work out, okay, how do we actually use it in a meaningful way and not just to, I don't know, come up with jokes and then come up with pictures and stuff, right? So in businesses, I think a lot of businesses have this question of, what do we do with generative AI? How can we best use AI, in what we're trying to achieve? We've talked about this as a group before, when we were preparing for this session, we looked at this. What's the importance, in your opinion, of MDM with AI, but I know we've talked before about kind of having a solid and sound approach to prompt engineering, for example, and using MDM around that. So Jesper, what's your thoughts, and how is Stibo approaching that side of things?
Well, as we've been sort of playing around with generative AI and in particular ChatGPT since back in January, and sort of evolved the way that we approach things. The technology itself is super powerful and fascinating, but without this properly curated data across different domains, you can't really do your prompts the right way. I think we've all tried this, that we've asked ChatGPT a reasonably stupid question. We didn't provide the right context for the large language model to respond in an appropriate way. So if you ask a stupid question, you get probably a stupid response back. So the data that we can feed to the machine, whether that's generative AI or any other machine learning use case, the data is essential. It needs to be curated. Yep. But with ChatGPT, obviously, there are so many opportunities to, let's say, retailers onboarding thousands of items every week. I mean, they need to do those product descriptions reasonably quickly in order to get to the market. And they also need to differentiate themselves in their messaging to competitor products. So you can actually use, you can say, competitor product information to sort of inject or differentiate your own messaging. So that's one side of it with MDM. The other side of it is the governance. So once you get that response back, you need to govern. You need to stay in. Humans need to stay in control. So you need to have a clerical review phase of whatever it is that you get back, because at the end of the day, the businesses, they're liable for. I mean, you've got copyright concerns, you've got compliance concerns, and things that you need to live up to as a business. So whatever you send out and get back, you need to govern that and make sure it's fit for purpose. Yeah, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. No, I mean that's a really, really important point. I guess that maybe just a couple of things to add. I guess we're seeing a bit of traction where I guess organizations are, I think more generally, rather than in an MDM context particularly, organizations are looking to kind of augment GPT engines with their own knowledge base or their own data. And actually, you know, if you're doing that, you want very reliable answers that are specialized to your own data coming out of the engine, and that therefore, you know, your own data needs to be good. It needs to be trustworthy. It needs, you know, so there's an importance of the role of MDM in actually making sure that you know if you're providing your own knowledge base to something, that knowledge base is based on sound data. And I think it's true in any case where we work with AI ML that the quality of information we put into it is probably more critical than it's been ever before. You know, and you know, hence sort of the role of MDM there. I think I mean, we've seen some great examples, you know, in some cases like led by Jesper's team that show how kind of augmenting MDM with things like ChatGPT can really like practically help our customers in just use the example of product description generation. That's a really good one. I think we'll see more of that, and I think there's more innovation that we can do together in the coming, you know, months and years. Absolutely. That you know, maybe look. I always think like you look at the things that are difficult for either our clients or for us today, like the things that are laborious and time consuming when we're either building a platform or when our clients are using a platform that we've built. And so things like, you know, generation of descriptions, you can see how that's really speeding up a process, but also things that typically take us longer time to do is like, you know, analyze a data model, for example. So I think there's big potential to start utilizing some of these advanced technologies to help us with that. Right? Okay, what does an initial data model look like? And feed that into the design of the solution as well.
And it doesn't have to just, I mean, just relate to data and master data. You can imagine that you can use this also for like building bots that provides a different perspective on your online help, for instance. We've done a few experiments with that. It's not exactly spot on yet, but we're getting there. So it's super interesting.
It's an exciting time, isn't it? Like whilst the hype can be distracting, this, you know, it's quite incredible what can be achieved today, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely, but it comes back to the first point, right? Is this isn't all this innovation that's happening is based on years and years of experience and seeing what's happening as well, right? So that for me is what's the exciting thing. Is there's lots of new tools popping up and stuff, but something like MDM, you know, it's got years and years of foundational knowledge in it to be able to know what it could do and what the potential for it is, right? So it is very exciting. One final question I wanted to ask before we wrap up is, I know we're talking about modern data ecosystems and modern approaches as a kind of, I don't know, like a concept, really, right? So it could be this way, it could help with this thing, but in terms of for example, things like sustainability programs like digital product passport, how does something like MDM, and these modern approaches to data, how does that support something like a digital product passport initiative?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think anyone who's been doing a little bit of research into digital product passport will have found that there are still many unknowns. I mean, what's it going to look like? It's probably a QR code that you have on your digital shelf or your physical shelf or even on the product itself. And you need to support this consumer in getting access to the information about where and under what conditions was this product manufactured and how did it get here and what's the carbon accounting for it and things like that. EU have started out with batteries. There's a whole pipeline, but there are many unknowns, and I think it's important that I mean, we keep our sort of patience, but also know that we need to have some kind of agnosticity to the data required for digital product passport, for instance, or any other sustainability compliance assessment that comes up. Because I mean, and you need more information than just your product data for DPP. You need information about who supplied it, where was it manufactured, by whom, under what conditions, and things like that. So front-end wise, QR code, probably not the tricky part. The tricky part is to really build the data foundation underneath it and get to understand what is the data that I need. Computing scope 1 and 2, reasonably simple. Scope 3 is a whole different ballgame. But you need all that data across domains in order to support those use cases. Right.
And this comes back to Mike. Go on, sorry, Mike. I was going to say, when we talked about this last week, and he talked about the proliferation of data is one of the things why all these modern new approaches are happening, right? And this is a good example where there's all these different data sources companies are going to have to consider.
I think this like example particularly is one where ecosystem thinking is like should be really high on the agenda, because you can't just meet all of the, obviously to Jesper's point, we don't necessarily know what all of the requirements of digital product passport are going to be yet, but you're unlikely to be able to meet all of them through just one platform. You're going to need to consider data that originates across organizations, maybe several organizations back from your own. We're going to have to deal with data that resides at a product batch or even an individual instance of a product level, to detailing its journey through its life cycle, and that's going to require different platforms and different organizations to work together as an ecosystem, and your organization could be at the end of that ecosystem, the one that needs to be able to expose the information to the end consumer, or it could be some part of the supply chain that gets that data there, and everyone has to play that part for the kind of requirements to be met.
Absolutely. It's really interesting, and I think it as a kind of observer, if you like, and listen to this conversation, I think it's been really, really interesting to hear it, and I know we're kind of coming up on the time we said we'd talk about this, but I think if there's going to be some kind of key takeaways, I would say is one is MDM still plays a foundational role in data, regardless of whether it's a modern data ecosystem or whatever it is. MDM is still a foundational aspect of that. And the second thing I think, which is really interesting, we keep coming back to this, is always consider what your requirements are before you start heading off down this road of where you want to get to. Is make sure you understand what you're trying to achieve and why. I don't know if you guys have any other key things you would list on there, or any other key takeaways you guys have, but they seem to be the big ones for me that stand out.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the use. I mean, you always need to know your use case. If you need to understand what problem it is that you're solving before you dive into it. But that being said, then there's two ways that you can then make that drive your innovation. One is that you really deep dive into requirements, and then you try to figure out what it is that you want to build, or you know that that's the direction I'm heading in. Let's just try and go there. And something like ChatGPT combined with MDM in a modern data ecosystem is one where there's an opportunity to just start experimenting. It's near risk-free, right? It's easy to do configuration-wise and things like that. So it's just get started and see what it can do. That's one example of fast prototyping for innovation.
Yeah. I think like when we think about, I'm kind of thinking back to the sort of the fabric, the mesh approaches, that type of thing that those approaches have been designed to enable organizations to deliver more value at scale, but aren't specific about, you know, what particular, you know, what specific individual business challenges they're solving. That they're an overarching approach that allows multiple challenges to be solved more quickly than perhaps traditional approaches would do. What that doesn't mean is that you don't need all of the capabilities that you would have needed to solve the approaches in a traditional way. So like, I think the thing for me is just remember, if you're getting it, you know, if there's some excitement over a new approach, that don't forget that doesn't mean you don't need all of the foundational capabilities that you've always needed. It's a really important thing for me.
Absolutely. Good. And, you know, if anybody who's watching this, you know, if you are a STEP customer, if you are looking at MDM and you need support or want to look at the ways that the MDM can be used, you know, like I said at the start, Stibo and Amplifi have been partners for almost a decade now. We've got tons and tons of experience, and, you know, Jesper and Mike, you can probably tell from the passion they're talking with, they're more than happy to try and find new ways of working and new ways of solving problems and innovating. So, you know, by all means, reach out to us, and, you know, and we would be more than happy to help with that. So, yeah, Mike and Jesper, thank you so much for the discussion today. It's been really interesting. And if anybody does have any questions, feel free to reach out, and we can get Mike and Jesper to answer those for you. We're taking a break next week because it's Big Data London next week in the UK. So Amplifi is heading there. And then we're back the week after. We're going to continue this series with Denodo, I think, on the 28th of September. So, you know, we look forward to speaking to them then. But again, Jesper, thank you so much for taking time out to join us. Mike, as always, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you very much. See you all next time.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
All right.
Bye.